all that the human mind can process is everyone's making money all the time except for you.
Yep.
The only stories you hear are the people that did 10x in crypto or IPO of this. It's all hogwash. Most of it's untrue, but it's easy to be like, everyone else makes money but me. How do I make some money?
This podcast contains the arguably witty banter of two friends, Skippy and Doogles, that like to debate about investing. The content is intended to be entertaining and for informational purposes only, not investment advice. You should do your own research and consult a financial professional before using any of the information in this podcast, and especially before investing.
Skippy and Doogles Talk Investing. Here's your next episode, people. Before we get started, listener mail, skippydoogles@gmail.com. We greatly appreciate that. Go to skippydoogles.com for all your Skippy and Doogles fantasies. You'll find a lot of greatness up in there.
Whoa. Fantasies? No. No Skippy and Doogles fantasies allowed. Nope.
You haven't seen the latest update on the website?
No. I'm terrified.
Today, we got 3 topics for y'all. First, we're going to cover First Brands, which is potentially a brand, ironically, you've never heard of. We're going to discuss what's going on with them.
Yeah, it's more like 952nd brands.
For some reason, that one didn't flow off the tongue, so they decided on First Brands.
Didn't make it in their brainstorming session for naming of a auto parts distributor.
Then we're going to touch on RadioShack and then wrap things up discussing private equity and your retirement plan. Let's get into it.
Well, spoiler alert, RadioShack is not really RadioShack. It's a Ponzi scheme, but we'll get there.
Whoa.
And I can't say I'm surprised.
I didn't hear terms like alleged. I didn't hear terms like...
Sue me already. All right.
Okay.
First Brands is the most boring company ever, but unfortunately, we have to talk about it because it's a scam. Like everything else is a scam right now. I want to go out of my way to the listeners and say next week I'm going to take some time. We're going to take next episode off the bubbliness and fraud that's happening right now, but not this week. Okay. It's been 3 solid weeks of nothing but bad things.
It has been. I tried to that point, though, honestly. Today, I need to find something that's not that. There's just so much that's happening right now that a lot of eyebrows end up going up because I go, really? Is this occurring? Is this occurring? Are we really uncovering that? It's just a lot. It's too much.
Yeah. I decided to read a book called The Price of Time this week that was recommended to me.
What'd you think?
Found it incredibly depressing because I thought it was basically about the history of interest rates, which it is, and how
it is.
People long ago were writing loans on tablets, et cetera, et cetera. But it's basically just a multi-100-year walkthrough of how humans cannot control themselves. And anytime interest rates stay low for an extended period of time, whether that's in the 1400s, the 1700s, the 2000s, it ends up blowing up. Things get bubbly. And it's just so depressing to read right now because you go, my goodness, people, can you not learn anything ever? Sorry, rant over.
I read that earlier this year, too. So I hear you.
Okay, so First Brands, Doogles. First Brands is, get ready, this is exciting, a maker of spark plugs, brake components, windshield wipers.
Excellent.
There's a reason you've never heard of this company. Long story short, the Financial Times did good reporting here, but I've never read an article like this, or at least not recently. At the end, the author's like, I don't know, if you see anything else, holler at me. It's basically like, there's some shady stuff happening here. This company is about to go bankrupt, but I'm just reading through the documents like everyone else, and it's super shady. So what appears to be happening at the highest level is off-balance sheet financing, meaning they have a whole bunch of debt that's not being disclosed to investors. And it looks like the main way they do that is through some mysterious special purpose entities hidden in their corporate structure. Then with invoice financing, which basically just says, oh, someone's agreed to pay us 30 days or 60 days or whatever from now, and we're going to take debt on the money that's going to come in the door. It looks like, correct me if I'm wrong, I think this is actually from a different article, it looks like they also may have done that to multiple people at the same time.
Yeah.
Which is hilarious, and of course this happens. So,
and step in for a moment. Invoice financing is very common. There are a lot of times where you take a vehicle that is used commonly throughout an industry, et cetera, and you just misuse it. So things like this, it's not saying invoice financing is inherently bad. I've worked in hardware before, and when you're building hardware, you're buying parts, whatever it might be, at times you need money. It's kind of like a bridge financing of sorts. You can say, we have these invoices, people are going to pay us, so we have accounts payable. And can I just get some financing in order to take care of my business between now and when I get paid? And so you put up your invoices as collateral. That's all that it is. People are like, cool, you have $10 million coming in. We will give you $10 million, pay us back on the other side of it. That is very common. Your point around doing this to a variety of people at any given time makes me think about buy now, pay later too, where we were like, it's hard to track. When you're like, oh yeah, I've got this $50 going over here. I've got this $6 for my burrito going over here. I've got that going over there. And it all seems like fine because it's off book sometimes even for yourself. It's hard to keep track of. So that's one of the things that seems like it's happening here. You're absolutely right.
Yeah. On top of all that, you have some of the loans that are easily traceable have rates around 19%. Very expensive. It tells you that even when the loan providers could piece together something, they thought this was a very risky business. And then if there's a bunch of other stuff off balance sheet, one of the bankruptcy filings has a range. Let me find it. It says the current liabilities are estimated between $1 billion and $10 billion. I understand that's a wide range. And current assets are somewhere between $500 million and $1 billion. I think, if I had to guess, I'd say current assets are about $500 million. And current liabilities are in the billions, like 2 to 5 to 7 to 8. It's I don't know why I found this so fascinating. It's boring on its face because it's like really deep corporate finance minutia. But I just think this is the first of many. And
touche, you're first of many. Long-time listeners of this podcast may recall that somewhere in like the first 20 episodes, I think it was around then, of this podcast, we discussed green cell capital. Do you remember that?
I was bored at the time, Doogles.
Well, you about to get bored again. We don't need to cover that in detail, mostly because I don't remember all the detail. But at the high level, it was a supply chain finance, like very similar type situation. It was a company on the way to a tens of billions of dollars IPO because they had some proprietary technology that they didn't actually have, which allowed them to be able to leverage themselves into a hoot. And a lot of people got screwed over, especially SoftBank. I remember SoftBank being like a big investor in that.
Yep.
But so this is in some ways a repeat of what we saw a few years ago. Like this has probably happened a bunch in history, but in recent history, just a few years ago, before the 2022 little dippity doodah, in 2021 you saw a bunch of nonsense also starting to occur. Nonsense is back, baby.
I mean, I think this is a good way to go bankrupt. I will push back only slightly. I understand what you're saying. I think you said twice that invoice financing is very common. I understand that it can be very common. I'm not sure that it should be very common. And there are cases in a hardware manufacturer where maybe you're a startup and you're growing, like, and your revenue model has to do X, and you've got to pull forward some of that revenue. And that's not a fingers crossed, but it's like these 5 things have to fall into place for us to be the massive success we want to be. In a company like First Brands, I would argue that's probably not their business model. And the fact that they were exploring inventory finance alone, well, on top of having other debt at 19%, like, who knows how long this house of cards has been teetering. Yeah. But I don't think this has been a healthy business for a long time. And I can't really make a good case that inventory finance is the right approach for them long term. I think it means they're struggling.
You might be absolutely right. What I was trying to then get to, but you kind of pulled the ladder out from underneath me now, but I'm going to do it anyway. I'm going to climb the house without a ladder. Is something that I've repeated many times on the pod before around how a lot of times when things go down, it's not because of something new and fancy that's happening, but it's doing a thing that happens a bunch at a time of fragility. And to your house of cards point, it could be that this may have been fine for them for a while. Maybe not the best option. Maybe they shouldn't have been using it, to your point, but it might have been fine for a while. And then when you really get to the point of fragility, now the invoice financing becomes like a real problem. And maybe they would have never gotten to that problem if they didn't rely on it in the first place. Who knows? But it seems like there's a bankruptcy issue. I don't know if have they already declared bankruptcy, or is this something that they're on the brink of?
As I understand it, This is tough to follow. They haven't filed bankruptcy yet. But again, I think this is from a different source. My memory's failing me. I think they are headed towards bankruptcy quickly because one of the banks or a government entity put together what was happening behind the scenes and actually held some of their funds in transit.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway,
interesting.
I'll take bets on that. If anyone wants to, if anyone thinks First Brands is not going bankrupt, please email us. I don't see a case for it.
We're not going to talk about this today, or we don't plan to. But when you said take bets on that, it made me think about the Jane Street options situation, which y'all, we'll put a link in the Substack next week if you want to check that out. But Indian options market, lots of bets happening, lots of gambling is the short version.
No, let's squeeze that in.
Wow.
Finish First Brands, but I want to squeeze it in.
Okay. Well, I was actually gonna bring up an Instagram comment right now, which isn't about First Brands, but it makes me think about that too. So
let's go there. Instagram comment.
So y'all probably recall we talked about Oracle and OpenAI. As a brief recap, Oracle is going to be selling $300 billion worth of compute to OpenAI over a 5-year period, $60 billion per year. We put out an Instagram post that just went through that, and we're like, what the heck is going on here? One of the comments that was made says, isn't that how pre-orders work? What's the point being made here? The reason that I relate this is because pre-orders is also something that happens a bunch. Pre-orders like this, I really only see like in Kickstarters, going to your startup point earlier. But anyway, pre-orders happen all the time. But with the Oracle OpenAI situation, and only time will tell how this plays out. This is one where the reason I brought up Kickstarter is because to me, this is one where on one side, it is compute that does not exist. And there's material investment that will have to be made for it to exist. Material investment from a company that doesn't have that to invest at this point in time. And the purchases are being made by a company that don't have the capital, and there isn't a clear path to them getting the capital to make the purchases. And so that is the predominant issue in my mind of what's happening there is on both sides, you have to take the most optimistic scenarios to say this company in the most optimistic scenario will have the ability to pay. And this company in the most optimistic scenario will have the ability to buy. So there's bets on both sides. That is what makes it different. And I bring it up in this case because, again, pre-orders, something that happens. It's not wild for a pre-order to happen. At the order of magnitude of $300 billion where bets are being made on both sides, it gets a little more precarious.
Oracle's current financial situation is stupid. I finally looked at it this week. Stupid. I don't have another word. Price to earnings going on 70. Price to debt to equity going on 5 times as much debt as equity. For those who don't know, equity is a really decent gauge of how much your business is worth, like bare bones, right?
Yep.
And so cash rolls into that. 5 times is stupid. It's not comparable to anyone else in their space. It's not comparable to IBM or Microsoft or Apple or anybody. Price to sales of 14. All the listeners know my rants about price to sales above 10. Price to sales of 14. It's idiotic. The reason this is different, thank you to our Instagram commenter here, is because this is like a cow walking through the McDonald's drive-thru and being like, I'd like 2 million burgers in 2 years. And that's meant to be hyperbolic because I guess in real life it'd be the farmer of the cow who has to then go breed 2 million cows. It's so cyclical. It makes no sense. Like it's literally hey Doogles, you want $100? Send me a future order that says you might have $100, so I can then give you that $100, and then we can say GDP is $7 million, but it's just us passing it around the same $100 bill. Yep. It's so different. I know I'm being dramatic here. It's by design. Yep. It's not a pre-order.
No.
Sorry. It is a pre-order, but it's much more the Cal McDonald's case than it is like so-and-so needs corn. So-and-so's sitting on $1 million. Yep. So-and-so agrees to pay that $1 million in 12 months to the farmer. That's not what's happening here. Yep. It's like so-and-so thinks that they might be able to get some suckers to write them $1 million check maybe in 24 months if they say that corn cures cancer.
Yeah.
And then I hope you get the point by now. That's
not
the
whole point.
Your standard pre-order situation. Not at all.
You should also demand royalties because you just came up with an amazing Chick-fil-A commercial. Like if Chick-fil-A decided to bankrupt McDonald's, they would send a cow to go, their Eat More Chicken ads? They would send a cow to McDonald's drive-thru to order 2 million burgers in the future. That is exactly how they do it.
Why haven't they done that already?
I know, it's brilliant. All right, you want to reach in the fishbowl and transition over to RadioShack?
Okay, let's do RadioShack and then we'll get to Jane Street because Jane Street just needs to be mentioned in this debate of companies going bankrupt. We also talked about this on the pod 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Some people went around. I don't even know if I'm going to mention their names because I don't really think they deserve it after running a Ponzi scheme like this.
Wow.
But they were going around buying up legacy brands like RadioShack. They bought Pier 1. Yep. They bought all this other stuff that was bankrupt. Mm-hmm. And then they ran these ads on like Instagram, Twitter, other places that effectively said something like, if you give us $300,000, we promise to give you $60,000 a year for the rest of time. Everything's wonderful. We own RadioShack. That's basically the pitch.
The one difference that does not add to the story, but I just want to say it anyway, is the ads were very close to what you stated. It was like, if you have $300,000, you could get $60,000 per year. This is not an offer. What is this?
What
exactly?
Okay, so it wasn't quite as.
It was nearly there. It's like any lawyer like looking at it would go, no, it's exactly what you just said, Skippy. Like it's very, very transparent. But
this was highlighted by a lot of people that knew what they were doing as straight fraud. Like it basically called out at the time. 2 to 3 years ago. Just this week, they were both indicted. Sounds like they got 660 retail investors to write an average check of around $350,000.
Oh my God.
Hey, what do you know? That's about what the ad said. They had the majority of people gave them $300K, and some people were like, this is such a good deal. I have to own RadioShack and Pier 1, despite the fact that they already went bankrupt and don't have any stores. The owners of this Ponzi scheme then pocketed millions of dollars for themselves and had no business model behind it. Basically, they had to get more money to come in the door. It's incredibly sad.
It's so sad.
It should have been stopped 3 years ago. I'm sad that it wasn't. That might be all I have to say on that.
It's just, you're right. Sad is the word that comes to mind. It also makes me really angry. And as you bring up a lot on the pod here, right? We're here for entertainment. We bring up these things, we laugh at them because of how ridiculous they are. And when you dig in, 600 people gave $350,000 to something that was, in my eyes, obviously wrong, but got caught up in a narrative because they were being sold to and led in such a way. And to your other point, regulators didn't do anything about anything like this. This is on Twitter. I think this literally might have been on Twitter, not even X. I think this was on Twitter at the time.
And it's not really fair. Again, sophisticated investors knew this was. I know several people that reported it as fraud. It's crystal clear. But if you don't know, if you have no expertise, and we live in an environment, especially today, but it was also this way in 2021, where it's all that the human mind can process is everyone's making money all the time except for you.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
The only stories you hear are the people that did 10x in crypto or IPO of this or whatever, bought the 0-day option and did whatever. It's all hogwash. Most of it's untrue, but it's easy to be like, everyone else makes money but me. How do I make some money? This ad seems not legit, but I don't know any better.
Yeah, it's sad.
The reason that ties directly into Jane Street Capital is because there's a Planet Money episode that's worth listening. What happened in India the same time that options trading got crazy in America, which is right around the COVID time when everyone's sitting at home, they can trade stocks on their smartphone, is people started trading like crazy. And in India, it's not as well a developed market, and people are generally poorer. It just is what it is. It's not a bad thing.
Yep.
And so options where you can take a small bet and sometimes turn it into a really large bet turned out to be even more appealing, right? And the India regulators basically didn't know what to do. As as the demand for options is growing rapidly in the post-COVID years, they didn't really know how to handle it. So what they did is they gave more access to people to trade options. They started allowing people to trade options every day. It became a very popular thing in India.
Yep.
A lot of market caps in India are so relatively small that a big whale from the U.S. can almost determine the stock price at the end of the day based on their buying or selling of a stock. And if they're very sophisticated, which the folks at Jane Street should be, if you've never heard of Jane Street, just know it's where Sam Bankman-Fried started. They just hire like brilliant people.
That's all you need to know. That is all you need to know.
It's a very sophisticated trading house, right?
Very, very.
Those folks going up against your retail investor in India trading options for the first time is not a fair fight, especially when those folks have enough money that they can effectively determine the stock price at the end of the day, and very easily see when options are mispriced and pick the other side of that.
Mm-hmm.
Long story short, Wall Street in America seems to have made somewhere between $1 and $4 billion just with one firm, Jane Street Capital.
Mm-hmm.
That came effectively directly out of the pockets of Indian retail investors who did not know what they were doing in options. Well, so I see both sides of this, and my opinion here might surprise you. One, there's a reason we tell people never to play options. Like, this is what's going to happen. You are going to lose money, 90 plus, and sometimes as much as like 98, 99% of people lose money trading options. It's not really even investing in my eyes. You should not do it. And the other piece is Jane Street does have some fault here.
Yes.
As does the India regulator, because this is an unfair fight. I mean, really, I think the Indian stock market regulator is the main person at play here. But this is the amount of money that they pulled out of an inefficient market.
It's massive.
It's massive. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. The one thing I'll say that I found to be interesting in this story, aside from the core theme that you're bringing up right now, it goes back to when you were discussing options being easier to purchase for them. And a part of that wasn't just the gambling side of it, it seems, from this piece. It was also because, as anyone that understands or has traded options before, you know that an options contract is cheaper than the underlying stock. And so if you, for example, if you're going to buy a stock that's $300 per share, one of the options on that stock might be $10. And so therefore, if you have a limited amount of money, it was also a way where the Indian retail investor could be like, oh, I have $10, so I can do that. And maybe that $10 can turn into $100 or $150 or whatever it might be. But I don't even have the $300 to purchase the share of stock. And so that seems like it was one of the things that got the options market going in addition to the gamble.
Gosh, Doogles, I'm not mad at you, but you said this sounds like a DraftKings commercial or something over there.
Yeah.
Oh, if you only have $10, I mean,
no,
come on, that does not mean it's logical.
No, I was just
it does not mean it's smart. It might be logical. It's not smart.
No, it's not. But I think it's important to the story with your David Goliath analogy you're talking about, because that was one of the things that got folks into the market, and especially when you don't understand options. And you just get, like, I think all they really understood, to your point, not all and not everyone, but most probably really understood, was the idea that you can get 5, 10, 15, 50 times your money, and it's something I can afford. Like, that was understandable. So it's an inefficient market, an illiquid market for the most part, that gets to your point around big swings in prices, in which an organization came in and completely took advantage of that. And in the court case, do you remember the geographic piece of the court case?
Vaguely.
Yeah. So in the court case, Jane Street did not want to give any information about their trading strategy nor where it was taking place. Like the judge, lawyers were like, what is the strategy? What's happening? Jane Street's like, it's our proprietary thing, and we will not tell you on planet Earth where it was occurring. And then one of the lawyers during an argument was like, well, in the market in which they were playing. And that was the thing that was like the clue that allowed people to start to figure out what was going on, because a lawyer accidentally stated the country.
Which is, so of course that was proprietary to them, because it's so hard to find arbitrage opportunity this great
Yeah.
with a market like big enough.
This size. Yeah.
This size, but still inefficient, right?
Yep.
You can't do this in the U.S. markets or any of the European markets. They're too efficient. There's too many smart people on all sides. It's so funny. I had friends in Malibu, California, in the early 2000s. You remember the online poker craze? I bet you led the charge of the online poker craze. Couple buddies who they graduated from college, didn't know what to do next. And they effectively were Jane Street to the online poker players that had no clue what they were doing. They just sat there with some skill and expertise and collected checks. I mean, I had a friend do this for 2 years. That was his full-time job because there were so many new suckers showing up thinking that they were good at poker and not having any. I mean, I guess this happens everywhere. But it typically doesn't happen in like $4 billion.
Yeah, yes, exactly. The order of magnitude is very important. And one of the main person that they use as the what do you call it? Like the character in the story, a retail trader, the person that was representing retail traders, Venki was the nickname that they gave to him. By the end of this, he was, I think it was $350,000 in debt, and that's dollars, like not rupees, not Indian currency, but dollars. And his take was like, he goes, you know what? Only way I can get it back is to play the options market. My only option is options, was, I believe, the tagline that he threw onto himself.
Yeah, if you want to cry this week, listen to that episode and hear how he talks about how it's ruined his life. The option trading has ruined his life for 30 minutes, and then at the end they say, will you continue option trading? And it says, of course. It's the only path forward. And you just go, oh, no. This is really, that's my reaction anyway. I just go, this is really bad.
All right, should we reach in?
Reach in. Where are you going?
Washington Post. So last topic of the day, there was a Washington Post piece called Why Private Equity Needs You More Than You Need Them. Bethany McLean wrote this. I hear your sigh. I see your whole posture change around this. When I sent Skippy this article this week, he just responded immediately, within seconds. He responds, he goes, because it's a Ponzi scheme. That's all. I'm gonna say a few more things here, just to give context around this. Folks have probably heard, and we've mentioned it here on the pod, how the market is opening up to, within retirement accounts, people being able to buy private assets. There was an executive order, I think it was last month, that President Trump put into action to be able to unlock the potential for this market. And the narrative around it is there's a lot of money being made in private equity. It's generally reserved for the wealthy. Can we unlock the ability for this lucrative asset to be able to invest, for the general public to be able to invest in? It's an opportunity for you all.
So much money being made that Harvard and Yale are having fire sales with their private equity investments. So much.
Exactly. And it's one of the things that is, I think that the fact that you just brought that up is important, because there are many times, I won't say always, but many times when there is an opportunity that, let's say, the top 0.1 or whatever percent, the most sophisticated, experienced folks are making buckets of money off of. And then they come to you and go, you know what, out of the goodness of our hearts, you as well should be able to participate. You should go,
I've made so much money here. I want you to be able to make it. It's like, no, the trade's probably done with.
Yeah. So, and that's not always the case, but it's something that's worth looking at. So one of the pieces of context that this article brings up is, if you go back to when this form of private equity was started back in the 1980s, you compare that to today, one of the big shifts that's occurred is the weighting of how people in private equity made money has shifted from highly, highly performance-based, which it's still performance-based, but highly, highly performance-based, to now there's more weighting that's placed on assets under management. So there's more of that. If you think about the 2 and 20 that's often brought out, where 2% of assets under management will go to a management fee, and then 20% of profit will then get paid to the managers. They're saying that an assets under management component has so much more weight, part of which is because many of the larger private equity companies have now gone public, so they have quarterly earnings to hit, and so something that's more predictable is more helpful for them, and assets under management is helpful there, according to this piece. The second part is that liquidity has been drying up, and if you put those two things together, they're like, okay, so it's harder for us to sell these goods, which means that's where the performance fee comes from. And we need more predictability, so assets under management becomes important. Mm-hmm. That is critical to this story because where is a lot of money that is untapped by private equity?
I mean, to all the people that couldn't buy it previously. You're non-accredited, non-sophisticated investors.
Exactly. And where is most of their money?
They haven't tapped yet.
Exactly. It's that group of people, and most of their money is in the retirement accounts. So that is why the title of this piece, Private Equity Needs You More Than You Need Them. That's why that's there. They need that cash because they need to increase their assets under management. That's the argument this article is making.
I mean, I'm just flabbergasted. You know what private equity typically is, and there's tons of good research by Dan Rance Monson on this. Sorry, I forget the name of his firm at the moment, but it's effectively small cap stocks, in some cases like micro cap stocks, levered with debt and lots of debt. And if you do that in public markets, you get effectively the same performance. But you would do it in a way that's actually liquid.
Yep.
What would happen to every retail investor, 90+% of retail investors that understood that equation, they'd say, you know what, I'm not actually comfortable with that level of debt and that volatility because microcap stocks have crazy swings. And so if you package it that way, you call it what it actually is, people go, I don't want to buy that. If you call it private equity and claim that you have great returns and think that it's this magical thing that someone out of their goodness of their heart is giving them access to, there might be interest.
Package it up, marketing.
This feels like First Brands all over to me. Like it just
could be.
Feels scammy. I hate it.
The other side of this that the article brings up is that's the assets under management side. The other thing that they're saying is occurring on the performance fee, the liquidity side of things, and you've brought this up on the pod before, is that there's been an increase in private equity firms selling companies to other private equity firms to get liquidity. And then in the last couple years, it seems, even more of what folks are doing is selling companies to their own private equity firm for liquidity. That's an eyebrow-raising one. This says that, I'll read this verbatim here. The popularity of another type of exit, in which the private equity fund sells the investment to a new fund of its own, has also soared, accounting for another 20% of exits in the first part of 2025. 20% of exits are Skippy buying his own stock from his own brokerage account.
It's basically the cow buying burgers from McDonald's again. I mean, or it is that find more capital until the music stops, right? So I raised this $100 million fund. I buy a bunch of businesses. I throw debt on that. My historical performance has been good, so I can go out in the market and raise a $500 million fund, and then I could sell some of the companies I bought with my last fund to my future fund, claim that my last fund had good performance, and really just kick the can down the road.
Yeah.
Tells you a lot of what you need to know.
Tells you a lot. Anything else you want to talk about there?
I don't know why, but that story reminded me of a story from the book The Price of Time that I read this week.
Oh, God.
That it was really enlightening. So you might be sitting back, you might be a younger investor, you might be sitting back and thinking about the animosity or the discomfort between our Federal Reserve and the president and our governors right now.
Yep.
At least to me, that had felt fairly unique. There's a story in this book, I believe, about Lyndon B. Johnson. And I forget the name of the Fed Reserve commissioner at the time, but this is in the 60s. President Johnson shows up at this dude's house on a ranch in Texas, says, hop in, I want to talk interest rates with you, and drives him on some off-road trails going like 70 miles an hour to try and scare the living daylights out of the Fed commissioner. Simply with the message of, I can drive faster and harder if you don't lower interest rates. Maybe I'll just close with that. It's an interesting time. Next week, Doogles, I don't know if you're okay with this. Next week, I'd like to talk, maybe, and this might be for premium subscribers only, I'd like to talk about how weird the market is right now because the CAPE ratio is over 40, which strongly implies historically, across the world, when a CAPE ratio gets over 40, the average return is negative for the next 6 or 7 years. That's just what the numbers imply.
Yep.
Yet there are some really interesting investments that are like completely left behind in the AI boom. There are core brands or companies that have been around for hundreds of years that are paying dividends of 4 to 5%. And I almost can't make sense of it right now. I just find it really intriguing. Now, if the bubble bursts, I'm not saying that those possible investments when it also go down another 50%, they could. But I think if you like them at this price, you'd like them even more down significantly from here. I don't know. You want to talk about that? Or is that boring?
Let's do it. And it's been a while since we've done a premium episode. I like the sound of it.
Cool. Thanks for hanging out with us today. Less bubble talk next week. And we'll talk to you then.
I can't promise less bubble talk. Bye, everybody.